Good morning, beautiful people, and welcome to Wake Up. Good morning, beautiful people. We are live.
The sun is rising, the sky is blue. Good morning, grand risings. Let's see what's new. It's the time of day for Sonia and crew. Good morning, grand risings. It's time to wake up with Sonia Poulton. Sonia Poulton.
Good morning, Grand Rising. It is indeed time to wake up with Sonia Poulton. And guess how are you? It is Monday, the 9th of March, 2026. It's 9:01 a.m. GMT. And thank you for being here wherever you have found me, whether you are on YouTube or Rumble or X or Spotify. We are not live streaming on X for reasons I've explained previously. But we are available on Spotify at the end of the stream, and we are live on Rumble and YouTube right now. Welcome to the show that will soothe you in your desperate need and give you a virtual cuff around the ear when needed. Oh, yes, indeed. How are you, beautiful people? How are you all? Good morning, Emma and Marcus and Red-Pilled Fox. Is it your birthday today, Poppet? Happy birthday, Red-Pilled Fox. Happy birthday to you. Or was it last Monday? Either way, happy birthday. Love those Pisceans. Happy birthday, Mels and Stephen and Simon and Paul. How are you all, you beautiful people? And I think I saw a new commentator. There it is. Tired of this. Looking forward to the show. Cheers. And cheers to you and welcome. And hello, Drumstick and Lisa. How are you all, you beautiful, beautiful people? And Humphrey and Emma and Louise and Rachel and JBM and Colin and Health Freedom UK. If you want daily news headlines, go to Health Freedom UK, although not right now, but he's doing daily news headlines, a very useful service. Michelle, do I make you feel so happy for some reason? Well, that makes me happy. That makes me happy. Hello, Vendetta and Marilyn. How are you all? Red-Pilled Fox, it is your birthday. Happy birthday. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. So good to catch you live. We're really PRV. I love it. Thank you, Philip. Thank you for being here. And Venus, morning, lovely people. And Dawn and King. Oh, no, King. See, I got you. I'm sorry if I've missed anybody out. It wasn't deliberate. I hope you are all fabulously well. What is coming up on Wake Up today? We will hopefully have a live connection to Amsterdam where we will be talking about the upcoming Bill Gates lawsuit. We will also be joined by SEBASTIAN, who testified at the rape gang inquiry. We will also be joined by wonderful psychotherapist John HENDEN to talk about natural ways to deal with depression. Also, we will be talking about Dr. Sarah Myhill's satanic ritual abuse. We will be remembering the rather wonderful statement analyst Peter Hyatt and music of life producer Simon Harris, two inspirational people who have been guests on Wake Up. And of course, we have your shout. This is where you get your say. And we'll be talking holistic dentist, NASA playing God. And as an Iranian, an email from an Iranian, tell me their insight, their view of what is going on in Iran. And also paradigm shifts and Donald Trump. Yes, Mark, I'm going to include it. Yes, indeed. And we will end with letting off steam and releasing their past. No, I'm not going to Amsterdam, my dear. I've got hopefully a live stream. I did wonder why you were speaking in Dutch on the live stream. Shin is fabulously clever. She probably has, well, although I think you are actually Dutch, aren't you, by birth? But Shin has a multitude of skills under her belt and lots of different languages, I think, is one of them. Marilyn definitely needs some holistic dentist information. Hello, Swiss Miss. How are you, darling? I've done my homework. Of course, I have. Peter Hyatt. God love him, Dark Side of the Moon. We loved him. Good morning, Katie. Good morning to you all. How was your weekend, people? Happy birthday to my very dear friend, Sue. I love the bones of that woman. I have to say, I went out Saturday night to celebrate her birthday and with our mutual fabulous friend, Lewis. Lewis is also an absolute star. He funded a number of my reports, including the documentary, The Business of Cancer, multiple reports available on YouTube. And he bought me that fabulous plant in the background there. Where just there. Look at that. Isn't that lovely? Absolutely lovely. And well done, Katie Queenie, for bringing such amazing people together yesterday in Hertfordshire, a gathering of freedom fighters, the first of many. I got to meet some wonderful, wonderful people. Some I have talked with online, and also their children. Just bright, bright stars. Wonderful stuff. And it reminded me that even when we feel set apart from kind of the group think of society, there are actually plenty of us out there, which was wonderful. Rachel, was that how you found me? Well, big up to Lewis, who funded the Business of Cancer. I am going to be joined right now, actually, not even going to hold back. We will do the news headlines afterwards, because just in case we lose her on the line, and I don't want to risk that. So let us bring in Fiona Rose Diamond. How are you?
Good. I'm so tired. I couldn't sleep last night. I tell you, I was a bit excited about today. Can you see me okay? Because
fantastically. We can
good,
see
good,
you.
good.
We can hear you. I'm so pleased, which is why I wanted to bring you straight on, because you know how connections can be. We don't want to lose you, right? So
No.
thank you for joining us. I'm so grateful that you are here with us. You are, of course, in Amsterdam at this moment in time, and it's to do with Bill Gates. Take it away, Fiona. Tell us why you're there.
Well, I spent some time because, I'm studying law now. So I've got a real sort of personal interest in this because of my campaigning, because of my studies. And the case paperwork is hefty, right? So I was up until about 4 o'clock in the morning going through this last night to give you guys an overview. So a lot of people have heard about this case against Bill Gates. And I think Robert Kennedy Jr. announced a couple of weeks ago, Bill Gates has been indicted in the Netherlands. Now, indictments are usually saved for criminal cases, but it is confirmed Bill Gates has been summoned, ordered to attend this case. He absolutely has to have representation. Now, he might not have to come in person, but he will have to have a lawyer present, and he will have to offer a defense, as will Albert Bourla and the former Dutch Prime Minister, and health ministers and media. So I think there's about 17 separate defendants in this case. So in Amsterdam today, what's happening at the Court of Appeal it's not a separate case, it's part of the same thing, but this is an appeal preliminary hearing with regards to evidence. They want expert evidence to be heard. So if I give you a little bit of a background about the case itself, against Bill Gates and Bourla, who obviously the, CEO of Pfizer. So the original case was filed in 2023. I think it was July 2023. And there's 7 Dutch citizens who have had one or more Pfizer jab that have been injured physically or psychologically or both by that jab. Unfortunately, one of those people now has passed away. So that lawsuit is obviously seeking public sort of exposure, and also a civil claim seeking damages. This second case, or this hearing today, is an additional 3 Dutch citizens, again, who have had one or more doses of the Pfizer jab. And this hearing is a request to examine the evidence and question witnesses before the main trial happens. So both cases, they're linked. It's the same lawyers, it's the same team. They rely on the same facts, the same legal arguments, and the same witnesses. But this is something that we don't actually have in the UK, certainly not for tort cases, for civil claims. So this being obviously tort civil, being a wrongful act that causes harm to someone, allowing them to sue for compensation, and the UK equivalent would be something like personal injury, negligence, misrepresentation, which is what we're talking about here as well. So these 7 plaintiffs, the claimants in this case, are obviously asserting that there was a breach of a duty of care. So the defendants, Bill Gates, Bourla, the Dutch PM, various media companies, had a duty of care, obviously not to lie and not to misrepresent and not to cause harm, damage, and injury to the 7 plaintiffs. So the plaintiffs have claimed, the claimants, the 7 injured and bereaved, now the 3 additional claimants that are part of this case now, is that government officials, scientists, media, and Pfizer gave false or misleading information specifically about, not just about the jabs, because I don't like to call them vaccines, Sonia, I don't like to call them vaccines, they're not vaccines, but about COVID itself. And that information that was given, I think we all remember the propaganda and the fear porn. So that information caused fear and in as such compliance. So through the fear, they took a jab that they were told was 100% safe and effective, and that resulted in injury, both physical and psychological. So what they're claiming is that Bill Gates, Baller, the defendants created a preferred or false reality through messaging that led to the claimants rolling up their sleeve from being told that they were taking a safe and effective jab to end COVID. And to give us our freedom back. As I'm sure you all remember, we got Freedom Day in July 21 in the UK because they said that enough people had taken up this jab. So they are asking the court overall to declare that the defendants acted unlawfully and to award damages, but they want to do this very, very publicly. They've not received any compensation from the Dutch government. It's difficult enough in the UK, but it's also very challenging here. So they are seeking damages, but more than that, they want to raise the awareness in the public because of the expert witnesses that they've got aren't exactly shy about what they're saying. So obviously Bill Gates and Baller are saying that, there was a real public health threat with COVID, that governments acted responsibly and reasonably. They relied on official scientific evidence. And they're saying that the 7 plaintiffs cannot prove that they have been injured by Pfizer and that jab caused their injuries. And that the biggest one that's probably going to frustrate people, in my opinion, is that, well, they chose to take that jab themselves. They had a choice. And we knew this is what was going to be said. So in other words, the plaintiffs, the claimants were misled and harmed, and the defendants are saying, well, we acted responsibly and we didn't cause any harm at all because, we didn't lie. So the main lawsuit obviously is attached to this one. That's still ongoing. The trial should be happening sometime apparently between May 26, can't believe what year it is, and October. So hopefully that's going to start progressing soon. But today is about the evidence that they've wanted to be publicly discussed and discussed before the trial, because it allows them the opportunity not only to have this discussion in a courtroom, to scrutinize the expert evidence that they're presenting, but to do so publicly so we can all be a part of it. This is why I'm here. I've come to Amsterdam. And I'm actually really pleased to be here. For me, I'm a bit too excited because it's a form of justice, I think, for a lot of people.
Yes.
Or accountability potentially. And at least this is the first of its kind. There's been nothing like this before. And I think the Dutch government the Dutch courts seem to have done a good job so far. So the expert witnesses are, as you know, we might not know, Dr. Mike Yeadon is obviously one of those witnesses. Sasha Latipova, Catherine Watt, Catherine Austin Fitz, and I think an Italian psychologist that talks about the behavioral manipulation that people suffered through the media, and all of them. And then I can't remember the last. Let me just find this because I've written these notes to try and get this out.
That is an impressive list, isn't it? That's at least 2 big pharma whistleblowers. It's a government whistleblower there. So these are people who spoke out during C-19. I completely agree with you. It's wonderful this is on a public stage. This is what we need. I love the unprecedented nature of it because often what's happened, as you know, because you're very much involved on the front line, is people have felt helpless throughout all of this. What can we do? This happened to us. The idea that people did it willingly is an absolute lie. As someone who studied psychology, people were coerced and bribed and threatened and blackmailed and put through all manner of torturous psychological mind games to take this. So none of that is accurate, what they're saying, but really interesting stuff. Go on, continue about your witnesses.
Yeah, so I'll give you, this. Well, I think I've named them all, apart from Joseph Sansone, which is the psychologist. I said, the behavioral, he'll say how that's impacted, was offered evidence in that. Sasha Latipova, who's the pharmaceutical industry researcher, as many people will know because they may have followed a lot of this from the very beginning. Mike Yeadon, obviously everyone knows that he's the former VP of Pfizer and chief scientist in respiratory diseases and, trying to find cures for those things. And he's obviously realized, his career is basically has been based on a lie as far as he's concerned. Catherine Austin Fitz being more of a financial analyst, but obviously she looks at this kind of holistically. and those who are in charge of rolling out this in lockstep, and Catherine Watt, who's the legal researcher. And Catherine Watt's someone I'm gonna post. I'm gonna ask people to follow on Twitter at CoviLeaks if they don't already follow me. I don't know. But there's a really good overview that Catherine Watt has done for this case, and she's obviously been on this, I think, since January of 25 is when they got the expert witnesses. Where am I now? The most interesting thing I think as well is with Mike Yeadon, he's not held back at all on his testimony and what he's said publicly, because if there's anybody that can talk about the toxicity and the design of these jabs, having worked for Pfizer, it's Dr. Mike Yeadon, and he's obviously asserted that they were intentionally harmful. So a lot of what's being discussed and what's being presented is they're not holding back. They're not going soft on it. They're saying that you lied about COVID. You lied about the threat. You massively inflated it. You coerced us, the fear mongering, the propaganda. That's why there's 17 defendants here across media, health, ministers. So they people were basically threatened into taking a vaccine that turned out to be unsafe. And the fact that they're saying, well, they had a choice and they did it anyway, they did it to themselves. I think that speaks volumes. But this appeal today is obviously, it's in the Court of Appeal, which is a high court. They had previously refused such a preliminary evidence hearing to take place ahead of the trial. So the trial is happening. Bill Gates he's got no choice. He tried to fight jurisdiction. He had to pay the plaintiff's fees when he tried to argue that you don't have jurisdiction over me, I'm not coming. And he's lost that. But they had tried to get this hearing before. They've tried to have this evidence heard and have the expert witnesses in court, and they're very confident with the evidence. So they're let the cross-examination happen. Let's also get disclosure from the other side. So what they want is sort of full disclosure from the defendants as well. What's their full defense, because there's lots of different stages in such hearings, but we don't have anything like this in the UK, where a preliminary hearing would be set just solely to discuss the evidence in the case. So it's really important. I don't know when the decision will be. Maybe about 6 weeks. I think the lower court decision on this, where they refused this preliminary hearing of expert evidence, they refused that. Now they've not refused the expert witnesses for the trial. That's not happened. They may try to do that. It depends how the Dutch courts and the judiciary face this. They have not made it that easy, but they've accepted this case. This case is happening. And I sincerely hope that even if this appeal is denied and we don't get the preliminary hearings to get all the evidence out there and have this discussed in a public forum, which is some form of accountability as well, and to have it listened to and scrutinized. If that doesn't happen, the Peter Stassen, who's the lawyer on this case, and Arno van Kessel was a lawyer on this case as well. He's now been disbarred. He was arrested for being some kind of alleged far-right terrorist, and he was basically kidnapped with a hood and put in prison. Now he's been released. I think he was in for 6-9 months, something like that. Now he's out, but he's no longer on this case because he's been disbarred. But obviously that shows they've already tried to stop this happening. So when the trial goes ahead, I would say that they will push and push for these expert witnesses to be heard. And today is the first time that they'll be going over. I'm going into the court now, which is why I'm talking really quick. So
you're doing great. You're doing great.
So I'll be the hearing today starts at 11. It goes till 4. The appellants will so that our side will plead their case to the court. The court will ask some questions. The defendant's side, I don't know who will be there from the defendant's side. I've not dive that much into the paperwork, but they will then maybe ask some questions and put their side forward on why they think that none of this expert evidence should be heard in a court or scrutinized prior to the trial. But they will not give up the fight. They will do their damnedest to get these expert witnesses into that courtroom when this trial happens, and it is happening. And it's it's something that when I first heard of, I was like, I don't know, how do I feel about it? I think, Dr. Mike Eden's ever the pessimist about this, or I would say probably a realist, has been convinced that they'll never let this happen. But to be at this stage now,
Yes.
I think it is an incredible thing. So I'm going to be updating throughout the day. And for those who have been injured and bereaved, my work has been hugely focused for the last 3 years on giving a platform to those who've been injured and bereaved, and to giving them a voice and to making them feel heard. And I think this is part of that that process as well.
Yeah.
And for as much as I possibly can, there's a lot more to read and to share about this case. And I think we need to be talking about it. And I know I do have to say, I don't want to come across as being insensitive as to the state of the world at the moment, Sonia. I've got a lot of views on what's going on, and the war that they've dragged us into.
Yeah.
I don't know what's happened in the last 24, 48 hours, to be honest with you. But yeah, I think this is the kind of thing that they're trying to bury.
Yeah, you don't need to, because it's great that you're as focused as you are at this moment in time on this, because this is so important. This is about justice. This is a huge injustice, a worldwide injustice. Questions.
Yeah.
Carly said, how can we keep up to date with today's developments?
So I'm going to be in the court, and because I am English and we need translations, I'm allowed to take my phone into the courtroom, which is a wonderful thing. So I'll be getting translations. Now, I hope at the very same time I can be live tweeting. It's not tweeting still, or Xing, I don't know, the devil's platform. But on at CoviLeaks, on X, that's probably where I'll be putting most things out today. And I've just gone outside the court. I've seen there's a group down there already with their banner, we need to deliver justice here. I couldn't read it because I think it's in Dutch. But there's already people gathering outside the court. So I will be updating on X, on at CoviLeaks, or if you just search Fiona Rose Diamond, you should see me. And I'll be pumping stuff out. But this is, for me, so because I've been studying law, I've had a couple of exams due recently for my end of module. So I've had my head buried in books for weeks now. I've had a lot going on. So I've not had the opportunity to deep dive on this. And, I don't like to talk about things unless I know about them, Sonia. I don't want to appear to be an expert when I'm not. But this for me is, it's very important to me personally, for those that I've worked with in the UK that are injured and bereaved. And I think for everybody out there to get some form of vindication and accountability, that you were right, guys, because nobody in authority has ever said that. Now, if a court can decide that Bill Gates Baller, the Dutch PM, the media over here misled and were unlawful and acted unlawfully, I mean, that will open, I don't want to say the floodgates, I want to stop, but that will lead to worldwide scrutiny. That will, this would be a precedent.
No, I'm excited. I'm excited. The potential for this is immense. We're all quite concerned about your safety and the safety of the potential witnesses and all this stuff. But this is exactly what's needed. This is literally, what has been needed. And it is unprecedented. It's great. It could open the floodgates. Why not? Why ever not? It's about time. And fantastic reporting. We're so grateful to you. This is exactly the stuff that we need to know about, exactly as it's happening. Anything else that you want to add before you leave us today? Because I know you've got to get into court. You're 1 hour ahead. So anything else?
Yeah, I'm just looking at time. Look, I think all of the expert witnesses they've got. I mean, Sasha Latipova, Catherine Watts, Catherine Austin Fitz, Dr. Mike Eden. I mean, I know all of them. I've worked with them. I've platformed them. They're not going soft. Okay, they're really not going soft. They've dissected this case. They are offering basically this novel pathogen. Whether you want to say that it didn't exist at all, there is no evidence that any of the measures whatsoever were needed at all. They're not going. This is not soft at all. And these people are experts. The defendants, Bill Gates has responded and said, and Baller, and their representatives have said, though, well, they're just not qualified. How is Dr. Mike Eden, the ex-VP of Pfizer, not qualified to talk on the toxicity of the Pfizer jabs? So I'm very excited, a little bit too excited. but also kind of pissed off still, to be honest, Sonia, you know. But
I know that we even have to get here. As somebody comment, why do we even need a bunch of kind of men and women in wigs to be able to tell us what we already know? But that is the reality. We need to have a legal precedent set here.
You know what, you're right. I mean, this is the thing. A few people, I've literally got to go in a second, but a few people have asked me, you know, why am I studying law? Because right now, this system is the system that we have. This is the furthest that anyone has gotten. We haven't had the opportunity in the UK. Our judicial review process in the UK to hold public bodies to account and private bodies acting in a public function, you have to file claims within 3 months. You know, they've tried that. I don't know if you remember, Simon Dolan did it in 2021, very early, actually filed in 2020. And they didn't want to hear any of it. They said that the claimants had an axe to grind with the government. Of course, we have an axe to grind with the government, because we know what they did to us was a massive breach of civil liberties and human rights. And they've rolled out a toxic by design jab that people took when they were told it was safe and effective. So we've got this system. We have to work with this system as it is. And I do believe in the simultaneous, you know, doing other things outside of the system. But we've got to use this opportunity now. And I think they have suppressed this so much. You Google this, and I think you had a little bit of trouble with this. I mean, it is complicated. And I will send you, Sonia, everything that I've seen. I'm going to send across to you, and hopefully we'll keep talking about it.
I get it, because obviously what I'd come up with when I started to research it last night, I came up with previous notes that I'd covered in 2023, but it's all the same thing. I absolutely get it. Listen, brilliant reporting. We're so glad that you could join us. As you can tell, if you haven't seen the comments, people are so happy that you're here today, because this is the type of that we absolutely need as it's happening. So thank you, Fiona. Please keep me up to speed with what is happening today, and more power to your elbow. Thank you for joining us from Amsterdam, everybody. Fiona Rose Diamond. I will put a link in the description, if I haven't already, to Fiona's Twitter/X feed, and hopefully you can catch up there. We are proud of you, Fiona, says Drumstick.
Thank you, and thank you everyone as well. Honestly, thank you so much.
Take good care of yourself.
See you soon.
Fiona Rose Diamond, everybody. What a fantastic report. That lady has been up all night compiling that. I can tell you that as a journalist. Amazing stuff. Baby doll, says Simon. Yes, indeed. What incredible, incredible work. Very, very touching indeed. Now, before I bring in my next guest, let me just do some news headlines, because obviously we went straight to Fiona. So, obviously, over the weekend, Ian Huntley, the man convicted of murdering British school friends Holly Wells and Jessica Chapman, has died after being attacked in prison. There's lots more to this story, okay? I intend to look at in the coming weeks and the coming months, but not today. Well, everything is still so raw. And also today in Parliament, MPs will be voting on the Lord's changes to the Children's Wellbeing and Schools Bill, including proposed social media age limit. If approved, proposals could see children blocked from specified internet services, and it will give the government new powers to bring in social media curfews for young people, or limit the amount of time children can spend on social media. But how are they going to do that? How will they be able to tell the difference between a child and an adult? I think you all know, because my audience is incredibly savvy. We know what this is about, right? We know what this is about. Yes, I will, Carol. I absolutely will, just not today. Vendetta, indeed, absolutely. And the assisted dying this week, the assisted dying debate continues in the House of Lords. And people often refer to Canada when we talk about assisted dying, assisted suicide, however you want to phrase it. Well, a warning indeed. And that is Canada's original assisted suicide and euthanasia law, which is known as medical assistance in dying, aka MAID, which passed in 26, required a 10-day waiting period between requesting assisted dying and being given the assistance to end one's life. Well, it actually turns out that there are some people in Canada who are having their lives ended by assisted dying on the same day that their requests are being made, which is shocking. So I could request it today and I could be extinguished today. Actually shocking. An official report by the Chief Coroner of Ontario's Medical Assistance in Dying Death Review Committee highlighted that in 2023, 65 people in Ontario had their lives ended by Canada's assisted suicide program on the same day that they made the request to do so. No consideration, Drumstick. Absolutely shocking stuff. And it's the reality is that same day suicides are commonly due to very, very poor end of life care. We need better palliative care around the world. Jacqueline, horrendous stuff. Horrendous stuff. Lucifer at work, says Blue Eyes. There's not much else I can add to that, frankly. Did anybody see that fire in Glasgow? We talk a lot around here about the problem with lithium batteries. Well, I think that's it is a historic building up in flames, and it highly likely that it started in a vape shop. Well, in London, as one example, one of the biggest causes of London fire brigade having to turn out to fires is lithium batteries. So we know there is a real problem. And the dome on that building has now completely collapsed after the fire spread through it. And I'm sure we will be getting more information now. Saw the fire this morning, says Robert. Awful stuff. And let's have some better news, though. And that is a High Court judge has ruled that Croydon Council in southeast London illegally created 6 low traffic neighbourhoods, LTNs, to make millions of pounds in fines from motorists. Many of us knew it was a scam. Well, this is the proof. And there has been previous proof, but this is a good one. The judge ruled they were unlawfully introduced to help plug the borough's dire financial state. The financially struggling Croydon Council is currently run by Tory Mayor Jason Perry, is now facing demands to refund all the penalty fines imposed on motorists, and a bill is likely to run into millions of pounds. LTNs impose fines on non-resident drivers to deter the idea of sort of rat running through residential areas. They cannot be used for the principal reason of generating cash, and Croydon Council did just that. Mr. Justice Pepperell in the High Court said, "I am satisfied on the balance of probabilities that the dominant purpose for making the scheme permanent was the need to safeguard the revenue raised by enforcement. Such purpose was unlawful, and I therefore quash the orders." Done, dusted, wonderful. I love that. That's right. Lambeth Council lost in court too, Damien. I love it. Let's continue. Let's just rise against all this evil that's going on around us. And also some other good news, and that is Maggie Oliver, whistleblower from Greater Manchester Police. She has won the chance for a judicial review on whether government failed to act after the abuse inquiry, the ICSA, which cost us millions of pounds. And what happened was the successive governments, so Tory government, Labour government, have refused to implement the recommendations from the independent inquiry into child sexual abuse. And Maggie, the trooper that she is, took it to court, and the judges agreed that this can now be subject to thorough and proper review. The judge highlighted a number of recommendations that are deeply disturbing that have not been implemented, including the continued permission of the use of pain-inducing restraint techniques on children. So the case will now proceed to a full substantive hearing. And yes, I'm cool with this. Are we confused? And just finally, I'm going to bring in Sebastian next, because this is just great as well. And that is Dr. Sarah Myhill. Met her at a conference organised by Academy of Nutritional Medicine and my lovely old mate Claire. Here's Sarah. I filmed her. I can't actually play what she's saying because she's talking about cancer, and it's in my film The Business of Cancer, which YouTube removed. And Dr. Sarah Myhill has been cleared of misconduct while suspended for COVID claims. And what happened was there was a death, and the partner of the person who died had asked Sarah to essentially just kind of like give some information about it. And Sarah wrote an email. It wasn't a report. It took her like just 2 hours. And that was given to the coroner. And then the medical practitioners tribunal was notified, and they dragged Sarah through it again. They've done it before a number of times. She's a battler. I love this woman. I love battlers. I absolutely do. And she's just incredible. But yes, she's been cleared of misconduct following the hearing last month. She was at one stage banned from practicing for 9 months in 2023. She was accused of risking safety by endorsing alternative COVID treatments. Can't go into it in great detail. This is YouTube, but I support her. I've always supported her. She's a fantastic doctor. This is what good doctors are made of. Dr. Sarah Myhill, take a bow. Yes, thank you, Stephen. And Ghetto Gothic. I have interviewed Raja Mia a heap of times. I invited him on actually last week to talk about grooming gangs, but he was on his way on a train somewhere. So yes, I've invited him on. He's been on a number of times, and you can find that. You can find that on my YouTube channel. So I now want to go to my next guest. Really important stuff actually to do with the grooming gangs. So let us bring in Sebastian. Let me just take Dr. Sarah Myhill off the screen. And there is Sebastian. Good morning to you, Sebastian.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm good. Good. Arguing with a pug about breakfast routines, but yeah.
As you do. As you absolutely do. Thank you for being with us today. You contacted me. You had taken part in Rupert Lowe's rape gang inquiry. And you had also talked about other things with me. And we're gonna get them out of the way ASAP, right? And that is you were born female and you transitioned when?
Medically 3 years ago, just over 3 years. Socially a lot longer than that. But medically 3 years. I've been on testosterone 3 years.
And you took part, as I say, in the rape gang inquiry. And just to say to everybody, today's stream is not monetized, just so I can have a proper, decent conversation with Sebastian about this stuff, because it's so vital what Sebastian has to say. So you were abused from a very early age, weren't you? How young?
Years ago, I'd always convinced myself that I was about 8 or 9. But then when you put the addresses and the time scale together, I was 6.
6 years old and your abuse started. What was it that, and why did you want to testify at the rape gang inquiry?
Although my initial abuse was people I knew, family related, between the ages of like 6 and 11. When I was 11, those abusers introduced me to local people, shop owners, cafe owners, chippy staff, people that worked at the cinema, just everyday people. You know, you're 11 years old, you're going across with your friends on the bus and that kind of thing. And then the abuse by strangers started.
So from the age of 6 to, I think it was about 40, right? You were abused, you were prostituted, at horrendous experience. And when we did a tech check, one of the things, because I said to you, I can be quite blunt. And thankfully you were prepared for that anyway. But when we did a tech check, one of the things I said to you was, do you feel that the abuse you have suffered has related to you no longer essentially wanting to be female?
Yeah, I think it's a question that I'm used to hearing, and it's a question I've asked myself for years. Before I transitioned, I had to be sure that I wasn't just running away, I wasn't hiding, but I'm in a place of safety now, so it's not for that reason. As far as I can tell, all the medical evidence is that kids work out who they are in terms of identity, what they like, what they don't like, how they interact with people, how they view society, all that kind of stuff, friends, at about the age of 6, which is when my abuse started. So
complex.
To me, it's trauma-based. I can't deny that. I'm not going to say that that's the same for everybody. I don't have the right to do that. But for me, it's.
And when we talked about this, and you say about trauma-based, and that is actually exactly the type of treatment that you want available to people who are considering transitioning, trauma-based therapy, right?
Yeah. I think, yes, have them trained in gender identity so they kind of understand what that means. but the basis of it from the very start should be trauma-informed therapy. So that if there are underlying issues, you can still go ahead and transition if it's informed consent and you realize why you're transitioning. So that if it's because all your friends are doing it on social media, they rule that out. If it's because of family pressure, they can address that. It's like, I don't regret transitioning, but I think other people could, and I don't want that for them because this is
And you definitely don't want children involved, right?
No.
You want keep away from kids. Same attitude as me, right?
Yeah. As I said to somebody a while back, if somebody had come up to me at the age of 14, 15 and said, here's this magic pill and it'll make you look like a boy and all these people will leave you alone, I would have jumped at that with no research, no questioning, no processing of anything. I'd have signed up that day. That's not safe.
No, it isn't. And, you know, and I think that you can be a real force for good, actually, because I think you've gained so much clarity through your experience and what you've been through and testifying at this inquiry. So let's talk about this inquiry. So our understanding, the outside understanding of this inquiry was predominantly to look at what the kind of grooming gang phenomena, which essentially we're told is Muslim Pakistani based. But you said to me you were surprised you were invited in the first place. Why were you surprised?
Because the only people that hurt me were white, Scottish and English. I live in an area in the Scottish borders where 96% of the population is white, Scottish and English. And the remaining 4% are largely white European. I had thought, you know, it's only about Pakistani gangs and other foreign gangs, and like, why would they want to talk to me? I don't fit the script. And I was over the moon to have the opportunity to provide the statement, the same one as I've sent to you, and some insight, and just to have a voice in a place that I didn't think I'd be welcome because I don't fit that description.
I'm really glad they did this. I mean, this.
Yeah,
Let me read you some of the comments. Great comments coming in, and interesting ones as well. So Mel says, very brave of Seb to come on here and a very different view. Absolutely. And I saw absolute value in what you have to say because, I mean, you break all manner of sort of stereotype and stereotypical ideas about any of this, really. And I think that's always important. And I don't necessarily think that you're even an outlier either. It could just be that there are other people like you that we're just not hearing about. Yeah,
people don't want to hear the moderate. They want to hear the extreme on one or the other. And nobody wants to hear the people in between.
You were really impressed with the team involved, Sammy, Marlon West, weren't you? And why was that?
I think that there was never any point where I felt pressured. It was ongoing consent. They understand the word consent, which is just as well what they're talking about. You know, at every stage, it was like, you can just say no. I didn't have to waive anonymity. I chose to, for the people that can't. Everything was gentle.
Really good to hear.
Feel like I was going into a courtroom. When I first went into the building, I was able to sit in the room and get used to cameras and microphones and people and just sort of acclimatize myself to that. I met a fantastic woman, Julie, on the first night down there, because it's a big culture shift from the Scottish borders to Westminster. Wow. And she sat with me for a good couple of hours drinking coffee in the hotel, and realizing that although a lot of the experiences are going to be different in terms of environment and perpetrator, the grooming techniques used are the same.
And
there's so much crossover,
right?
Even though I thought it was two separate worlds that would never clash,
right?
The techniques are the same, the way they target victims, same. the way that it's protected by government for whatever reason, same.
And one of the concerns that you had is the weaponization of what we are dealing with, the deep concerns. To expand on that and how it will potentially leave children vulnerable.
I think I'd heard a conversation I go to coffee shops and I like people watching and just listening. And the amount of conversations I'm hearing with people going, oh, did you see the thing on X and whatever? And, well, we don't have Pakistanis here, so we're safe. And that terrifies me, that people are going to be that busy looking over there, which needs to be addressed, and it's horrific, that they're going to think that if that doesn't apply to their town, that their kids are safe. And that there's nothing further from the truth.
It's a false sense of comfort, isn't it? As you say, look over there, but not here. And what you really want to do is make parents aware that your children are potentially unsafe with whomever, regardless of background, regardless of culture, regardless of race, anything, right? That children need to be protected always round. Yeah,
I mean, and adults, because I think in my later years, I was raped and abused and gang raped and manipulated by people in all sorts of positions. I'm not going to say too much. I don't really want to leave the country.
No, and I don't want you to be in any danger either.
People right down to your next door neighbour that's the friendly guy that looks after the kids all day.
Yeah.
So there was a whole range of people and professions.
Yes, and that's important as well. It's not just, and also, what about in terms of sexes? Was your experience? Well, no, I know it was, and I don't need to ask this a question. Let us talk about the involvement of women and how that can lull children into a false state of safety, right?
Yeah. One of the hubs, and by hubs, I mean where we would go as children and as adults to be given appointments for clients, was just a local cafe. Most of the staff in there were women, and they would be positioned to identify who was vulnerable, to identify who they could draw in of all ages, whether that's kids or adults. They would be sent into nightclubs to chat with, the 17-year-olds that have sneaked in and invite them to parties. And in terms of the sexual violence and abuse, a lot of the women were probably the cruelest that I encountered. And in a different way. It wasn't a physical force way.
What was it?
I think shaming you into things, very manipulative. We're quite smart. we understand emotions, we understand body language, we can read body language extremely well. Using that, threats to family, most of the threats to tell my family came from women.
To tell your family that you were being abused, that you were being prostituted?
That I was prostituting myself, that I was doing this, that and the other. Most of the threats were from women.
I mean, it's shocking, and it's not really, because you only have to look at like Ghislaine Maxwell, how she was very much involved in that. And also I see that 3 women have now been interviewed under caution to do with Mohammed Al-Fayed. And again, they're accused of enabling. Again, it's the same thing.
I think a lot of it's the enabling and the supporting it and making the system work. The women doing those roles keep those rings working.
Right.
If you didn't have them, it would be more difficult, because then it's going to have to be the guys going up to an 8-year-old girl or a 20-year-old.
Right.
It's not going to feel as comfortable. It's going to be more difficult for them to get that initial trust. And it's like, we should know better. We've had Myra Hindley. We've had, we should know this.
I hear you. But also, we don't want to create panic or a state of alarm. So what is the sort of compromise that can be made where parents make their children aware, but not in such a way that their children are constantly looking over their shoulder and not getting to enjoy life. Do you know what I mean? It's difficult, isn't it?
I think, say for 40 years, I was numb. I didn't recognize emotions. I couldn't tell you what I felt. You know, if you feel nervous, you feel it in your tummy. I couldn't process that. I think the biggest threat to abusers, groomers, exploiters, whoever, is that the person recognizes their gut feeling. And whether that's the kid or the adult, whether that's dealing with your family members, or whether that's dealing with a politician, whoever it is, to listen to your gut feeling and to learn to trust it.
Oh, what have I just done? I've just taken, sorry, Sarah, I just took you off the stage. I think that's a vital point that you're making there. And the irony, of course, is that, and we'd had a conversation about transgenderism and my position and all of that sort of stuff. And where I'm coming from, I've always been an ally of whomever, right? Because I'm not a bigot, right? But where I'm coming from is very concerned about children. I was very concerned about men claiming to be women. And actually, a lot of that was about, you need to sort of dampen down that fear you have. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like, these men are perfectly fine. They're women. They're not going to hurt you. And so we've been told to actually ignore our natural instincts, right?
I think society as a whole, you don't want to use the word grooming in too many contexts.
Right.
But we are emotionally and intellectually groomed by whichever narrative that's running. And it's checking in with yourself and just going, does this feel right for me? Does this make sense to me? Am I going to be all right if I say yes to this? And if not, then remove yourself from that situation. I think in terms of toilets, it always comes down to toilets.
It always does. And I think it's a shorthand in the same way as what is a woman, right? It's a shorthand, a kind of, but it is also insightful as well. And you'd said something to me, which kind of really made me look at, I thought about it over the weekend. And one of the things you said was you went to use the ladies' toilets, looking the way you do. And what was it that you observed with the woman who saw you?
It's about a year ago. I wasn't quite as hairy, but in my head, I still passed as female. I just looked masculine. So I thought, no, there's not a problem. I'll just go in here. And there was a woman in her 20s who looked terrified. It was
terrified at you being in there.
Yeah. She saw me and the color she froze. She went into freeze mode. She couldn't really speak. She's just like, are you meant to be in here?
Oof.
And I thought, right, I'm not going to go into, well, I'm a woman and I didn't. She looked terrifying. And I've never stepped foot in a woman's toilet since, and I never would. Not because I'm a female, but because their perception is male and they're
right.
scared.
That's why it's complex, isn't it?
Advocate for men. I can't advocate for males to go in there when she had that level of fear, even just thinking I'm male. Right.
So do you use men's loos now?
No, they stink. I did go in a couple of times and I thought, oh, smelly. And I also see the point. I'm not male.
Wow.
I don't have I think if there's an alternative space, whether that's a disabled toilet, I prefer just accessible toilets for anybody that doesn't want to pee in public. If there's an alternative space, I will use that alternative space. I will try to hold it until I can get to an alternative space. If I have to go into the males, the same as women do in a nightclub, then I will, but it'll be very, very rare. I understand. Plus, I don't want to get clocked by men.
Oh, Lord.
You know, because they're going to go, oh, there's a female in here, which is great if it's like an office job at 2:00 in the afternoon. Not so great when it's the rugby crowd that are in the club at midnight.
Bless your heart. Let me read you this
Difficult.
message. I think it really says so much. It's from Leaked Wisdom. It says, that's a lot of mental anguish to carry for so many decades, Seb. I hope it alleviates some of the pain to know that so many of us actually do care about you and your recovery. Big love. And that is echoed throughout the live stream. People are really in awe at how candid and open you are prepared to be. And I am
I think
too.
we have to be. I think there are a lot of survivors who are not in a place of safety. They haven't had the support. They haven't been able to get out. They haven't had the therapy that I've been blessed to have. That they're not able to do this. I am, and I don't think I could forgive myself if I didn't. My mum passed away in September, and she never knew. But now she's safe. Nobody can hurt her, and they can say what they want about me.
Yeah. I understand. Sometimes it takes parents, but I've heard this before, it takes parents almost being released from this earth in order to be able to release the children that are left behind.
Yeah, because nobody can tarnish her name, nobody can make her feel worried, nobody can scare her, nobody can touch her. And they've already done the worst they could do to me. So.
Oh, please do take good care of yourself. Anything else that you want to add before you leave us today?
I think just thank you. Again, when I wrote to you, I thought, don't know if Sonia's going to go for them. I'll drop her a line, see what happens.
I'm amazingly open-minded, but not just open-minded. I think it's really important to get as many different viewpoints in this world as we humanly can. And yours is quite unique in many
I think with
respects.
survivors, it's hearing as many as we can and actually listening to as many as we can, because everybody's experience is going to be different. The failings of structures that they've encountered will be different to the failings I've encountered, and that gives a much broader picture. Also seeing that not all trans people were not a monolith.
Right, right. Very important as well.
We're not, neither are survivors. We come at it from different filters and different experiences. And just a huge thank you for giving me a voice. That's all we need.
You're absolutely welcome. Take good care of yourself. If there's anything else that you feel I can do or any updates you want to give us, feel free to contact me, okay? I'm very glad that you did feel free to contact me, because given some of the things that I've said and some of my stances, I thought that was very brave of you in the first place. I was like, well, this is worth listening to. So anyway, listen, take good care of yourself. Sebastian,
right. Thank you.
Everybody.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Seb, lots of love to you. Bless, absolutely bless. Really important to have as many different viewpoints as possible. And that's what I'm up to around here. Oh, yes, indeed. I listened, just to say this before I bring in our lovely John Hendon. I listened to Warren Thornton last night reporting on the Iran elementary school where 168 girls were killed, 600 yards from the naval base, airstrikes on that day. And Warren is absolutely categoric saying that the UK took part in the targeting of school children by allowing the use of British-owned Akrotiri Air Base. And Warren says that Netanyahu knew, Pete Hegseth knew, and Keir Starmer knew. Warren also went on to say stuff that I had no knowledge of whatsoever, which sort of shocked me, and that is 35% of total casualties in Iran are children. And even more, well, not even more egregious, let's say, egregious. And that is Baron Trump bought 30 million oil positions before the bombs dropped in Iran, made a bet on oil, essentially. Who told Baron that this was going to happen? Is this insider trading? Why is there no investigation? Are the president's family making money off murdered children? That's a question. So I will add the link to Warren's show. Worth watching, absolutely. Later in Wake Up, by the way, I will be referring to an email I received from an Iranian viewer. Very, very powerful. But Warren's report was also extremely powerful and well worth listening to, frankly. What else before I bring in John? I see that Peter Mandelson has refused to testify, going backwards and forwards. Peter Mandelson, obviously former US ambassador to America on behalf of England, and is obviously out of that post, and because of his extensive relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. And he was arrested the other week on the say-so of the Speaker of the House of Commons, who said that we were in danger of him fleeing to the Virgin Islands. One must wonder where in the Virgin Islands, because we know that Epstein's Island's in the Virgin Islands, and we also know that Richard Branson's island is in the Virgin Islands. So very interesting, but Mandelson said that wasn't going to happen. But Mandelson has now declined the request to speak at so what happened was the Oversight Committee at the House of Representatives, they wanted to speak to him about extensive social and business ties to Epstein, and he has declined. Peter Mandelson is that kind of geezer. He will decline everything that he humanly can. He will deny everything that he humanly can. He wasn't called the Master of Spin and the Prince of Darkness for naught when he was Tony Blair's henchman. And by the way, in terms of Tony Blair has come out saying Keir Starmer needs to be doing more in terms of Iran. Tony Blair has yet to be penalized for his actions in Iraq. I can't believe that we still allow this, frankly, gobshite to still be saying what he's saying. Outrageous stuff. One more thing. Dr. Joan Coleman and the Rains list. I put a clip from my film Paedophiles in Parliament on YouTube last week, and what was weird is I posted it, and then I was sent a story on the same day that emerged at the same time, and it was about how hundreds of cases of ritual abuse against children are going unreported every year in the UK. And one of the things that I learned from Dr. Joan Coleman, who has now since passed, may she rest in peace, was how they sought to demonize her in the 80s when she said there is ritualistic abuse, satanic ritualistic abuse taking place involving children, and they denied it. Well, now they're being forced to start admitting it, finally, although they did in a report that followed the demonization of Joan. And so what's happening is that NAPAC, the National Association for People Abused in Childhood, saw 1,311 calls out of a total of 36,000 that mentioned organized or ritualized abuse, which amounts to about 3.6% of calls that they have taken over about 9 years, actually. But it's still of significance because it's always been denied. There are at least 14 cases in which people have been convicted of sexually abusing children while using ritualistic practices over the last 40 years. So it's a very real thing. The establishment have long sought to deny it, of course, for, well, numerous reasons, as I'm sure you can imagine. So, yes, it gives me no pleasure to say I told you so. And of course, not to my audience, because my audience know full well what's going on. But it gives none of us pleasure, right? So much corruption and evil on this planet. Yes, indeed, Summer Breeze. But we are here to take it down as much as possible. Christine said, we listened to the Rains list, and my husband, who grew up in Guildford, knew two of the listed as they lived in his street. My days. Yes, Lenticular Cloud. That is only the reported ones. It's a spiritual war. Boop. Absolutely it is. And they are back out in no time when they're rich. Yes, Shin. Dr. Coleman died. Yes, Humphrey. Dr. Joan Coleman died. Excuse me. So I visited her, I think at the end of 2017, and she died, I think, 2018, 2019. It was about, I don't know, 9 months after I visited her. Absolute legend. Yes, where am I? Absolute legend. No, different Dr. Coleman. We're not talking Vernon Coleman. We're talking Joan Coleman. Right. Thank you, Swiss Miss. Thank you to all of you, by the way, for being here today. I always appreciate you. And thank you, Danielle Krause, as well, for your super sticker. Right. Let us bring in somebody who knows rather a lot about all the important things in life. Let's bring him in. Here he is. John Hendon, wonderful, wonderful psychotherapist of our acquaintance. Here he is. How are you, John?
I am very well, thank you, Sonia, and I hope you are too.
Well, I am well, actually. Yeah. And although the weather's a bit muggy, John, we had that one wonderful day last week where everybody's spirits shot up.
I know. Right? It was. I was looking forward to having a bonfire in the garden yesterday. I had my annual clear up of all the prunings and everything. I have a huge bonfire, and I say to my neighbour, shut all your windows because I'm going to have a conflagration. And it rained on it yesterday morning, which I wasn't pleased about.
I mean, our garden is having a big overhaul, and we just have to keep waiting because it's very weather dependent, the kind of stuff that we want to do in terms of the landscaping. But yeah, anyway, listen, John, thank you for being here. We always appreciate you here. And what you're coming to talk to us today about something that's so very, very important, and that is about really a more natural approach to tackling the issue of depression rather than even psychotherapy or antidepressants. And for those who don't know, because we do have new people in the comments today, and they won't necessarily know your history, but you spent decades in the NHS, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
Tell us a little bit about that, just to bring people up to speed who aren't familiar.
I spent 22 years in the NHS as a practitioner and a manager, and then went on to form my own company, which is training, consultancy, and advisory stuff on mental health and emotional well-being. And I've never looked back, you know. That's but I've got all those years in the NHS experience where I learned so much and found out what really happens in the mental health industry, if you like, and have been campaigning against the worst aspects of it ever since.
And you're doing a sterling job. And you've also, I've interviewed you together with Joanna Moncrief, who's also doing a sterling job as well. Same stuff. Just tell people a little bit about Joanna Moncrief and what she stands for, very much where you're coming from.
Yes, Joanna. And this is a nice segue into my poster for the day, actually.
I have to say, Simon said diagrams, do his diagrams. People know you, John, for your diagrams.
Yeah. And you, there's the segue. So there's Joanna Moncrief's name up there.
Wonderful. Take it away.
I mean, there's the title for today is, exercise for depression rather than psychotherapy or drugs. It's been shown to be more effective. And I question the word depression because Joanna, in her 2022 learned research papers, has disproved this idea of the biological basis of depression in the brain. And she says it's absolute bunkum. And so therefore, the whole idea of depression as a clinical diagnosis has been challenged now. So I tend to describe it as extreme feelings of hopelessness, helplessness, and despair. And I've been there during my lifetime, and I know you have, Sonia. And, it's not something as a fault in the brain as biomedical psychiatry would have us believe.
The problem is, of course, not for you and I, but the problem is for the industry. And that is, there is a reason why they want us to believe that it's biomedical, and that's financial, isn't it? If I go to my doctor and I say I'm feeling down, I'm instantly offered pills.
Exactly. I mean, it's a massive industry, and they spend a big psychopharma, the sort of psychological side of the pharmaceutical industry, spends billions of pounds every year on promoting these products, and they are bombarding GPs with them all the time. And the trouble is, so many GPs believe what they claim to say, and we know it's not true. And so there's a wonderful article. That's inspired me for today's talk, and that was in Mad in America. Now, this is a website. When I first heard of Mad in America, I thought, oh, what's this, some wacky site? But it's not at all. It's run by Robert Whitaker, who is a survivor himself of emotional distress and also big pharma medication that he was on. And he hosts eminent people in the field. He's always talking about the disadvantages of psychotropic medication, the harms they cause. He invites speakers on, he quotes research papers, etc. And he talks also, or he hosts people that talk about non-medical interventions, and so continuing the theme of about 5-6 weeks ago on self-help, it seems perfect today to talk about how exercise can be just as effective as medication and or psychotherapy.
Now, before we proceed, because I know we've hit this roadblock before to a certain degree, because some people respond, but I can't physically move. So how could this help me?
Well, that's a very interesting point, and that's often the criticism against it. And in fact,
Exactly.
the article by A.J. Clegg et al. In the actually no, it's by Peter Simons, and Peter Simons. He quotes this paper, and it's a meta-analysis of the many studies in this area over a period of time. Now, just to cut through the jargon, a meta-analysis means looking at all the different studies of looking into how exercise can be just as therapeutic, if not more so. He raises that point, well, what about people say, oh, I can't do it, I'm too infirm to exercise, etc. Well, I like to use the example of my own father, who's 101 in 10 days' time. And he get up, sitting up and standing up each day. He's pretty much chair ridden now, but he has one of those little foot bicycle machines, and he does it for 10 minutes in the morning and 10 minutes in the afternoon. So there's always something you can do. And there's something I was looking at the other day, chair yoga, people who can't stand up, for instance. There's all sorts of physical activities or physical exercises you can do for that. And for those also, there are some people who, been sort of not doing anything for ages. They may be got quite obese and they're inactive and unfit, and there's a great scheme, isn't there? And people can look on the internet for this one, and it's from couch to potato to 5K in 6 months. So there's you can start somewhere. And I mean, I'm part of Park Run, which is the Saturday morning 5K run. And I think I'm going to do one more, I think, before I just stick to the stewarding of it. But anyone can do that. I mean, some people might not like the terms, but even 2-ton Ted and 2-ton Tess can do it. And I've been on park runs where people have been walking around. They might do a few steps and then they'll walk again, but they finish it. They get round that 5K. And all the way along, there's cheers and claps.
And also, just to say, John, it's important to note that not everything is for everybody. That's just the way life is sometimes, right? Sometimes not everything is available to everybody, and that is just the way it is. But what we are addressing here is the majority who could actually do something active that could alleviate the symptoms that we've come to understand to be depression, right? So what is actually happening to the body that is alleviating that sort of mental anguish?
Well, you're flushing through the blood system to start with. And so you completely change the blood going through the brain and the organs. You create that sort of natural high by taking exercise. And, that feel-good factor. And I've spoken to many people who have thought, oh, I really don't want to go out today. It's dark and it's raining and it's cold. But they never say when they get back, I regret going out. They always feel better when they come back and think, I'll do that again. So there are great advantages to it, and on the body. And the GPs as long ago as, I think it was 1994 in Yeovil in Somerset, used to prescribe people who could be diagnosed as depressed. I say low mood and so and so.
Right.
But they prescribed attendance at a local gym and have a personal trainer to help.
Let me read you this comment. Interesting. I was prescribed Meloril and Seroxat. I think I probably made an absolute pish of
Seroxat.
There you go, in my teens. But what actually worked was complete change in lifestyle, media consumption, diet, and social circles, etc. And so that's a top to toe, root and branch change of one's life, isn't it? And sometimes that's needed, isn't it?
It is, and it's the old solution focused thing. If something's not working, do something different. And that viewer of yours did a whole range of different things. Sometimes it's just one small change in your life can make a difference. And, preferably if that's exercise, but it can be a series of changes. And they found that that's the best way. And to prescribe Mellaril and Seroxat together, I mean, Mellaril, from my memory, is an antipsychotic, and Seroxat is a SSRI antidepressant. And they can be crippling with side effects, both those medications, especially together.
Let me read you this. Marilyn makes an interesting point. It's not just about being obese. It is also often about the issue that depression can cause people to not have the will and motivation to move, even if they are fit. And as someone who has suffered what was termed depression, I know that feeling, getting out of bed, hard work. And also it can be a bit of a vicious cycle, can't it? It's like some people will eat because it's a comfort to them. They will eat to feel better, and then they will find themselves in even worse of position. Can you address that for us, John?
Yes. And with any cycle like that, you've got to nip it somewhere, and your example of not wanting to get out of bed, I've had clients in that same situation, and sometimes just a simple thing, as soon as you wake up, pull the covers off and put your feet on the carpet beside your bed. That is a small thing you can do, which prevents you then lying there for another half hour, 2 hours. So that's one way of addressing it. Another way is people say, well, I'm getting fatter and fatter. Go to Weight Watchers or some other slimming world or some other scheme. So it's nipping it in the bud somewhere,
right.
and making
but you
those
have
changes.
to take action, don't you? That's the thing.
Take action.
Because nobody else can take action for you. And it's really hard. I have to get up at a ludicrous hour on Mondays and Fridays, right, for the show. And when that alarm goes off, John, all I want to do is turn off the alarm and go back to sleep. But I do exactly what you've just said. And that is, I no longer turn off the alarm, because it's always dangerous anyway. I literally do that. I pull the covers right back immediately. And actually what's happened now, John, is it's become habitual, because these things do become habitual, don't they? Let me read you what Jen says as well. I agree, John. Once I have motivated myself to get on the turbo trainer, I feel so much better for it. I have joined a Friday walking group where we will have a silent disco at the same time. So also, team up with other people. That helps, doesn't it?
It does, because you get that peer support.
Yes.
That's where these Weight Watchers organizations do so well, because it's peer support as well as the facilitator. But I had a client once who said, I just feel so rotten. I know I've got to get out and go for a walk or go for a run. So I said, so how are you going to do that? And he said, well, I've done it. He said, I line up my running, my trainers, my socks, my short or my jogging pants and my top. And so as soon as I get out of bed, I tell myself, right, get them all on. And once they're all on, he said, no, what I'll do is pick up the key, open the door, and off I go.
Right. And do you know what? It's all, I think in many respects, it's about kind of pre-preparation, right? And so that you, in the same way as if you're seeking to lose weight, pre-prep your meals, because that will help you a ton, rather than rock home, whatever, exhausted and just reaching for the same thing. Pre-prep is a really great thing. Boti says in the comments, incremental changes, baby steps, always making the bed is a great start. Well, John, you've been an absolute advocate, haven't you, for making the bed and the importance of that as a starting point, because it kind of sets you on the road of good intent for that day. But nobody is pretending any of this is easy. Absolutely not.
It's not.
Right. Go on, John.
It's not easy, and you've really got to be determined. You've got to say, look, what do I want to achieve here? Do I want to have a shortened life on antidepressants, antipsychotics, and I just say one thing there, and we always say this, don't we, rightly so, anyone who's on antipsychotic or psychotropic medication, if you want to reduce it over 24 to 36 weeks with adequate supervision. Never stop it abruptly.
Thank you for saying that. So important, because some people, when they listen to conversations like this, they feel that there's some pressure put on them, but that is absolutely not what you're advocating, because you know the dangers of that. It's so funny. Simon's in the comments saying, we need a quick diagram. I'm not sure. I don't think we're getting a diagram, Simon.
No, we're getting a list today of eminent people, one of whom is Dr. Peter Gertscher, and he wrote this wonderful book, Deadly Medicine and Organized Crime, How Big Pharma Has Corrupted Healthcare. And he talks a lot about the dangers of psychotropic medication. And going back to this report, you know, that Clegg talked about in Mad in America, this Mad in America article. And by the way, anyone can access this. It's a completely free website. You can go onto it, Mad in America. Just log on. They ask for donations periodically to keep them going, but you can just find loads of stuff in there.
This is a sorry, John. Go on.
Yeah, I was going to say, no, I lost my train of thought now.
Find loads of stuff in there.
If I go off on a tangent, I can't.
No, it's okay, because I'm trying to respond to as many messages as possible, because often what happens is after you've been on, I then find all these questions for you that I didn't address because I missed them. So no worries. And Drumstick says, can you thank John for the back exercise he taught, the Mackenzie? I do that every morning and night and did wonders for my injury. What's the Mackenzie, John?
The Mackenzie method, yes. And it's McKenzie. And he was a New Zealander who found that you don't need to go to expensive osteopathy and the other back specialist. I can't quite think of the name of just now. You can just use this Mackenzie method. And again, you can look this up on the internet. And in fact, if you look on YouTube, I think there's some videos to show you how to do it. But the simple thing is, he just says by arching your back up like this, like a sort of a leprechaun. No, what do you call it? Lizard. Yeah, right. L was the right beginning. Yeah, lizard. You know, you put your spine back into shape as God intended it to be, and your whole frame, you know, the skeletal frame, and that's a much better cure than. And I mean, in extreme cases, I remember a friend who was going for surgery for a back injury, and I said, "Well, have you tried the Mackenzie method?" She said, "No, I've never heard of it." She tried it, and she was cured. So the surgeon with his glistening scalpel had to go away and find someone else to practice on.
We love stuff like that. Squally says, I'm very depressed. I go for walks when I can, but it doesn't help. What would you say to Squally?
Well, that's a good point. Now, there's 2 points I'd make. One is, are the walks a brisk walk or are they an amble? If they're the latter, they won't have the effect. It's got to be aerobic in some way. And the second point I'd make is that walking is not the best for everyone for improving their emotional well-being and lifting their spirits. There are other approaches like, well, there's jogging, of course, there's yoga, there's strength training, there's Tai Chi, and other mixed aerobic programs. So it's finding what works for you, really.
And good stretching. I try and stretch a lot, John. Even when I'm sitting down at my desk, I'm doing all manner of things here, there, and everywhere, right? As much, and with my feet as well. When I'm watching the TV, I was taught these brilliant exercises by a Chinese practitioner. Again, really simple stuff where you just pull your feet back like that and push them forward at the count of 10. Amazing what it does. And so anything really that contributes to it is better than nothing, isn't it?
It is. And with those sort of stretching exercises, and they're brilliant, Sonia, and I use them as well for myself. I use this green band as well, which I practice with. But the secret is to start slow and just do it very gently and gradually build up. And it can take sometimes a week to 10 days to build up to you're really stretching and forcing the muscles. and you're less likely to cause injury that way, and to feel the benefits in the long run.
Sounds great. And Lenticular said, I needed to hear John today. It is helping me sort my health happiness plan out. ASAP, thank you. And Monopods is the person who went to buy your book on eBay and found that they were asking for a donation to mermaids, if you remember.
Yes.
Monopods is thrilled to see you here today. And I presume that eBay is still offering that on your books.
No, they're not. I wrote a forthright message to them saying I wanted it removed immediately. And I gave details. I gave a link to all the awful things that mermaids, so-called charity, are up to. And I noticed next time I looked, it had gone. There's another charity there now. I'm not saying the two are related, but I hope they are. Right.
Well, I'm sure they are, and I think that's people power, because otherwise it would just go on like that, So it's really good that you addressed it. So, John, anything else you'd like to add today? And I just want to say this from DJ Markson, because there's so much good news that's also happening, like Bill Gates and a lawsuit to do with him, and the Maggie Oliver has been granted a judicial review. So really important, powerful stuff is taking place. And Markson is like, we are right in the middle of the greatest awakening in the world. He's buzzing. Which is a wonderful thing, isn't it? That sort of stuff is contagious, I think.
It is. And this is all part of this good news, this self-help stuff. We can do this ourselves, and I mean, the other thing about the Cochrane umbrella review, which I mentioned, it's a Mad in America website, is that exercise, they're recommending exercise to be the first line of treatment, or a complementary option, not like medication is, and still big psychopharma, or rather big psychiatry in psychiatric institutions up and down the country are still prescribing medication to people when they come in instead of exercise. They should be prescribing exercise, but they're not.
Yes.
And you're talking about lawsuits. I'd love to see a lawsuit where psychiatrists and the trust who's employing them are in the courts for not prescribing exercise when all this meta-analysis shows it's better or even more effective than these other approaches. And of course, with people on long-term medication, psychotropic medication, lives are shortened as a consequence. I've seen it myself in many hundreds of patients, and the research backs that up, So exercise is the way forward.
However you do it, go on.
However you do it. And the other thing I'd say is that, if you want to, find out more about this, if you just ask, I find I'm using AI a lot these days, so ask questions saves me a lot of time on trawling the net. Just ask simply, is exercise as good as psychotherapy or antidepressants in treating depression? And you come up with 2 pages straight away of all the advantages.
What does it say? I'm curious, because I find that a lot of time with AI, it's very much about what the mainstream has decided. So what does it say in answer to that question?
Well, it says it even refers to this article.
Wow.
I've mentioned. And so it's bang up to date, and it says the meta-analysis has been done to show that exercise, whatever type it might be, in the list about 6 or 7, is better or as effective as therapy and psychotropic medication.
Powerful stuff. Summer Breeze says, I go forest bathing and foraging. That sounds fantastic. I love a bit of foraging. You can't beat it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do too. John, thank you as ever for being with us. There are other topics that are of great interest to me that I want to bring you back on to talk about. So we will arrange the next date. And thank you so much as ever. John Hendon, everybody, psychotherapist. John, do you have a copy of your book to hand that you can flash in front of the screen? Because that book, you've done several books, but the one about striving and thriving.
Oh, about thriving, yes. And what it takes to thrive, techniques for severe trauma and stress recovery.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
This
that one
brilliant
there.
handbook, brilliant book, and such easily accessible tips to help you overcome traumas.
And I
actually.
mentioned before, it's not just for as a self-help book, but it's also for practitioners. So the hundreds of counsellors and therapists that watch your show can actually have a copy of this and use it as their trigger book for asking questions, you know, helpful questions which help people move from survivor through to thriver.
Absolutely, everybody. This is John Hendon, and I'm pretty sure in the future he'll be back with some more diagrams for those who are like, where's my diagram from John?
I promise I will. Yes.
We absolutely do. Dark Side of the Moon, I think, kind of articulates us all. And there's a big red heart next to your name. Indeed. John Hendon, everybody. Psychotherapist that you can absolutely trust. And I say that unequivocally. John Hendon, lovely to have you with us, John. Great week to you.
And to you, Sonia.
Wonderful man. Wonderful human being. Wonderful human being. How are you people, you troublemakers? You want diagrams? I could draw you a diagram. Where have I got anything to? Oh, look what arrived. Lovely Wayne Leyton, his new book, Passion. In fact, it's in 2 parts. Look at this. This is pretty impressive. So he'll be joining us again soon. Wayne Leyton, who proved that, I think it was council tax enforcement, is almost always illegal when they're using these outside agencies. So very interesting stuff. Where am I? Says depression is a teacher. Learn the lesson. Thanks, John. Great wisdom, says Freedom Journey. And Sean lost 5 stone. Never put it back on. Cut out carbs and sugars or cut down drastically. Sugars. Also eat organic as much as possible. Yes, hugely useful book. Cheers, John. Absolutely. And Squally said, if you've never had severe depression, lucky you. I had a breakdown. I get it. Honestly, I absolutely get it. But I also know that it was absolutely vital for me to do everything I could to keep moving. I did an article once about how dogs help you in health. And certainly having dogs has helped me because dogs force you to go out. Dogs force you to get up and get moving. But I do understand, Squally. I do. It's very painful where you are. I do get it. And I'm trying to do everything I can to alleviate that distress that you are feeling. Okay, people, I want to remember 2 incredible people, absolutely incredible people. So first of all, Simon Harris, Music of Life producer, responsible for like Derek B, Bass, How Low Can You Go, Demon Boys, Daddy Freddy, MC Duke. Well, I discovered that he died in February and I was really gutted about that because Simon had been on with us last August and he'd approached me. I knew Simon from when I was a music journalist and my speciality was hip hop, and we did lots of work together. And I also ran Music of Life for a week when they were away on holiday. And it happened to be the same period of time when they had licensed Prince's Most Beautiful Girl in the World. And it got to #1, not through me, absolutely not through me. I was just kind of holding the tiller, as they say. And Simon Harris sadly left us in February. And really, I thought incredibly sad news. And the thing about Simon Harris was that he was never afraid to see a barrier, see a boundary and say, is this appropriate? Should we really have this in place? And he did that with music and lots of wonderful stuff. But one of the reasons that he'd approached me last year to come on the show was he, as a British Jew, was absolutely devastated by what he was seeing going on in Israel. And I thought, in memory of him, and given that none of this appears to be abating, I thought I would play you this wee clip of Simon and what he had to say and why it was important for him to speak out as a British Jew.
Just like most British Jews, and actually most British Jews, I think probably are very content to just stay with that, with the opinion. You listen to what you're told and don't challenge anything. And I didn't. I just kind of passively went along my whole life that Israel were the good guys, the Arabs are the bad guys, we're the chosen people, Israel is, everything. I'd never actually been there, by the way. But I am not a practicing Jew, but I go back as far as my family. Both parents are Jewish, my grandparents, my roots go all the way back to Poland. I never considered my roots going back to Israel. Like I say, it's somewhere I'd never been to. but certainly a few hundred years back to Poland. And, you know, I just kind of passively went along with, you know, the whole thing. And more recently, even leading up to October 7th, you know, the rise of anti-Semitism and how difficult it is for the British Jews. Now, just me personally, I can't speak for anybody else, and I'm not an expert on this, but the anti-Semitism is not something that I have seen. I've always found the UK a very welcoming place, very diverse place, and I've always enjoyed, I've got friends, you know, all races, all cultures. And when the October the 7th thing happened, I just saw it as, first of all, I was, you know, I was shocked, of course, like everybody. You know, I don't like seeing anything awful happen like that, and it was absolutely terrible. But I've seen this, the way that Israel responded initially has happened many times before. You know, they've gone into Lebanon, and yeah, I remember 10 years before that they flattened Lebanon and everything, and I just didn't think it was going to be something which would be ongoing as long as it has been, and as out of proportion as it has been, in my opinion.
I wonder what Simon would have to say about what is happening in Iran. I would imagine that he would be equally as appalled. And that's the point about Simon Harris, is that he was never afraid to speak out of turn, quote unquote. And the world was much richer for Simon Harris. He had been battling with leukemia. He was born in 1962. He got into mixing as a mobile DJ out of Essex. He became a radio DJ for Radio Forest. And then he went on to this incredible success, and he worked with lots and lots of people. He remixed tracks for Prince, for Heatwave, for James Brown, for Grace Jones, for Joyce Sims, for Steve Silk Hurley, for Roy Ayers, and the first official Elvis Presley remix. So Simon Harris, rest in peace. You were never afraid to test boundaries, and the boundaries that needed to be tested and broken down. You will be fondly remembered, an absolute legend. And the other thing about Simon, which I always found with him, is he was always very self-deprecating. He wasn't one to like go, oh, I did all that or do that. He was really like a very humble chap. So rest in peace, Simon Harris. You will be absolutely missed. And Simon is somebody that influenced me in my younger days, as I say, as a hip hop journalist. And I always found him really great to deal with then. There was a lot of respect in the industry for him, even though he was, as I say, oftentimes, quote unquote, speaking out of turn, pretty much like myself. So yeah, always absolutely fondly remembered. And the other person that I want to fondly remember today, and it was quite weird when I was compiling this yesterday, because it was like a sense of, I had a bittersweet sense, because it's always sad when people pass, right? Well, certain people, some people, the earth breathes a sigh of relief when they pass, but not the people that I'm talking about today. And Peter Hyatt was known for his work in statement analysis, and he passed away on March the 5th, 2025. He was a devoted husband, a father, grandfather. He worked in ministry in New York, and he became very significantly well known after Richard D. Hall pulled this genius trick. And genius, and I don't mean trick like trickster, but what Richard D. Hall did was he got Peter Hyatt to analyze statements of Kate and Jerry McCann, and it was so eye-opening. It was very clever, and that put me on to Peter Hyatt. And after that, I'd talked to Peter a bunch of times. I've interviewed him a bunch of times. And the clip that I've chosen is to do with Madeleine McCann, because that's perhaps what he became most famous for, his work. But it's also to do with the madness that surrounded Christian Bruckner being the German deviant who had been in prison for heinous behavior. But the one thing that we were absolutely certain he hadn't done was taken Madeleine McCann. Have a listen to what dear Peter Hyatt has to say. And I don't want to say too much other than to show how deep and rich his knowledge is, that this was said 2 years ago. And that was before the German police realized they had no choice but to let Christian Bruckner free. They could not keep that man in. They could not charge him about Madeleine McCann. Have a listen to what dear Peter had to say. You've now been watching this Madeleine McCann case for a very long time. Any idea where we're likely to go next with it? Are we going to get another Patsy pop up?
That's possible. I remember the German prosecutors put out a statement saying, hey, if you were in Portugal at this year, that year, and you bought marijuana, can you give us a call? That type of
farcical.
silliness. Yeah.
It's farcical. They've reduced it to a farce, haven't they? This is the thing is that laugh that I had at the beginning, as I say, it's not a disrespect to Madeleine. It's what they've been prepared to do in order to be able to try and make the shoe fit Christian Bruckner. And but it's also farcical how the media took it up as well and declared that he was, the number one suspect. Any thoughts on that?
Yes, it is something that churned by media. Media does work, and we've seen this, I think, very broadly since 2020. Media does work in lockstep. And so everyone wants to cash in. Everyone wants to be part of a story. We found Madeleine as a young woman now, and that, that sort of thing. They take it because it benefits them. And they don't worry about retractions, and they don't worry about corrections. And that's why in our generation, our time, if there's a correction in media, it's really tiny, if it exists at all.
Yes. Peter Hyatt, what a phenomenal individual. Total respect for him, as indeed for Simon Harris. Let me read some of your comments here that I've noted. Swiss Miss, Mrs. Peter, so does Dark Side of the Moon. Jen says, rest in peace, Simon. I remember watching that show several times. Lenticular says, rest in peace, Simon Harris. Robert says, Peter is very missed. Nikki loved Peter, watched all his Maddie work. It was great stuff, right? Dark Side of the Moon, quite accurately, I have to agree, the German is a bad guy, but he was a red herring. Soul to Soul wants to know, how do you keep yourself safe? What do you mean by safe? I mean, I've been through the mills, right? I've been threatened. I've been under police investigation. I've had death threats, and I believe in a higher order. Like, I believe that I am protected. And you know what? Even if I'm not, my brother told me a very long time ago, when I was starting out as a very kind of rookie journalist, and already I was looking into injustices. And my brother said to me, always remember, Bab, that's what my family call me because I'm the baby of the family. He always said, always remember, Bab, they can kill a person, but they can't kill an idea. They can't kill what that person stood for. And I've always remembered that, and I've stood by that. And whatever will be, will be. I don't necessarily believe in reincarnation. I kind of think this is one life, so I'm giving it my best shot and hope I'm doing well at it. And that's kind of that, really. Peter was great, Woody. He was a wonderful, wonderful man. And Karuna has, I probably haven't pronounced that correctly, but good morning to you. You've caught live this time, which is absolutely wonderful. So yes, wonderful Peter Hyatt. Peter faced his cancer diagnosis and treatment with absolute bravery. He was still working through it. In fact, I interviewed him while he was coping with it. And on that interview, actually, an amazing individual. And I think both Simon Harris and Peter Hyatt were leaders in their field, and they both brought a great deal of truth and compassion and understanding to the world. And I'm very grateful to them. And you can actually view Peter's service. It's available online. And there's a forever link, which I will put in the description below. Very, very sad, very emotive. It might not be the type of thing you want to watch, but it might also be the type of thing you want to watch. And I want to give you that option, should you want it. They can't kill an idea, MB. No, you only live once, says Ghetto Gothic. Thank you, Nikki. Rest in peace, Peter. Peter Hyatt was an absolute legend, says Jacqueline. Yes, indeed. Wise words, Daniela. Absolutely. My brother is wise. So I love him to bits. And all my family know that I'm absolutely a troublemaker. And I think in the best sense of the word, frankly. So let's get on to your shout. So, interesting. Louise sent me some interesting clips. Now, you may or may not have seen these. We obviously talk a lot about geoengineering around here. And just while I'm on it, Peter, I saw your email. Thank you. Really interesting. And thank you, of course, as always, for your donation. Always very appreciated. Peter, former pilot. Really interesting stuff he had to say. I need to absorb. It's quite a long email. I need to absorb what you have to say, and I will report on that if that's okay with you, obviously without revealing your full identity. So, but to go to what Louise sent me these really interesting clips, and again I will put the links in the description for you. And one is of Jeremy Clarkson, and he's talking about how This cloud that you can see was generated by the engine. It's a mixture of hydrogen and oxygen. And he says in about an hour's time in Mississippi, it will actually rain. And lo and behold, it actually rains, right? And he says NASA is playing God. It's making its own weather. And well caught, Louise. And I've not ever seen that clip before. It's interesting, right? What's that? Oh, because of your, especially around the paedophile ring, was very dangerous territory. So yes, indeed. And thank you for asking that. And so really, that was really interesting stuff. Now, this would have been decades, at least a decade ago, a long time ago. And it's fascinating, of course, because it appears that for some TV programs that they ran these programs, and then the news arms of these TV programs, Clarkson notoriously worked on the BBC, as indeed did the next person, John Craven's News Round. They were both BBC programs. And yet the BBC has spent a very long time denying geoengineering. And obviously what happened last year, it was around June last year, we did that thing at Marble Arch where we talked about geoengineering, about chemtrailing, etc. And that was when the media was finally admitting that, yes, this is what's taking place. They are funding geoengineering. They don't admit to chemtrailing, though, by the way. They talk about geoengineering as a bigger, expansive thing. Paul said, I always shout, become a whistleblower at Spray Aircraft. I'm a busy man. I'm sure you are, mate. Right. So I think that's interesting. Thank you, Louise. And then the other one was John Craven's News. I used to watch that as a kid. So heck knows how long ago this was. Actually, I think I've got the date, 12th of April, 1978. And John Craven is talking about how to make it rain in Spain. Well, that's interesting, isn't it? Because there's a very famous expression, isn't it? The rain in Spain falls mainly on the plain. Only we always assumed that the plain was the ground they were talking about. But what if it's actually a plain that they are talking about? We don't live. Oh, somebody else is talking about something completely different. That's fine. Australian floods was cloud seeding. Yes, Daddy. Absolutely. And so John Craven is there. He's talking about how experts get together and try and make it rain. It's on an unprecedented grand scale that they were doing it. And what was happening was the planes were flown up through the clouds and they were dropping these kind of diamond droplets. Really interesting stuff. Taking you back, Catherine, 1978. This is Louise. Louise, thank you so much for those clips. I tried to upload them this morning and they kept being rejected. I'd taken screen footage of both John Craven and Jeremy Clarkson. It wouldn't allow me to upload it for some reason. So I thought that was a bit peculiar. I used to really enjoy John Craven. Interesting stuff. But this they've been recognizing it forever. And we certainly know there was that BBC program which was in Lynmouth. And I think that was about 1956. And that was the Lynmouth floods. Could have the year wrong. Forgive me if I have. Lynmouth floods in which people got killed. And that was absolutely related to geoengineering. So thank you. And Tomorrow's World, Humphrey Fluffy. Absolutely. So thank you, Louise. Or the rain in Spain falls mainly from the plain. Yeah, that's right. Let's reword that little poem. So thank you. I always appreciate it when our eagle-eyed viewers say, "Oi, Sonia, you seen this?" And it's oftentimes I haven't. So always very grateful to receive your information. Thank you very much indeed. And let me just remember to tell you, because remember the other week we had lovely Leyton Benta on with us, and Leyton had his film Where Are the Children, and he was having a premiere, and he got back in touch just to say they had a fantastic premiere. It went brilliantly, and also he'd promised, hadn't he, that he would send us a link to his film Where Are the Children, and I will put that link in the description. That's what I will do. And well done, Leyton Benta. He's raising awareness about child trafficking and what happened. And it's based on a fictional hero, brave young soldier, Trey Simmons, just 31 years old, putting everything on the line to unveil the dark schemes lurking within the shadowy corners of a secret government agenda. So if you can watch it, please do. What's going on there? Oh, you do adore my videos. Thank you, Damn Coffee. Tuning in post night shift keeps me sane. Thank you for all you're doing. Oh, post night shift now. Oh, kind of nice though, right? Because now you can put on your snuggly socks and get your hottie botty. You can tell what kind of girl I am, right? Simon is still upset that John didn't do diagrams. I love you people. You crack me up. Whitstable flooded in 1952 also. Thank you, people. Thank you, people. Right, more your shout. Modern dentistry. This really is a shout. This is a shout out from Joe from Richmond. Joe from Richmond is terrified of dentists. Hasn't been to one for 10 years, afraid of the constant fluoride, the pushing, the head x-rays, the extraction of healthy wisdom teeth. This is all kind of modern dentistry horrors that we hear about, right? I'm sure I've told my modern dentistry horror story. And that was when I was pregnant. I don't know if you still can now. It was a long time ago. It was like, 29 years ago and I was pregnant. But then you could get free dentistry. So I remember going to a dentist and they advised, I can't even remember now, but they essentially advised that my whole mouth should be fitted with new fillings. And I was like, wait, what? And so I got a second referral and they said, you don't even need one new filling and awful stuff. So Captain Flint is also scared of dentists. Well, anyway, so Joe is really looking for a sympathetic, holistic, biological dentist, preferably locally, that isn't going to cost a fortune. And she says, I need to get over my fear and face the music. So this is a shout out. We have so many great people who watch Wake Up from all walks of life, including dentistry, including medicine. If you are or know of somebody who could give relatively decently priced treatment holistically to Joe, please get in touch with me. I would be very, very grateful for that. And because I can really relate to what Joe's saying. I haven't been to the dentist for a while. And that's in part because my dentist has turned into, it's all about money. Like it's frighteningly all about money. When I went there for a clean, I don't know, 2 years ago, maybe now, when I went there for a clean, it's like, oh, let's do this, let's do that. And it's like, I just saw this all adding up and I'm thinking, I keep my teeth in fairly decent order for the most part. Shouldn't need much doing to it. And wait, Rachel had a similar horror. Unfortunately, I had the filling and my health, look at that. What's what Rachel's saying? And my health went so downhill from there, took years to rectify. Exactly. And we need to be careful. Only teeth left are ones unfilled as a child. Oh, Base Driver said the Butts in Brentford. They have a great DMD there. Really? Okay, worth looking at. Joe, do you want to check that out? The Butts in Brentford. That's not even that far from you. That would be amazing, Base Driver, if you've hit on something there. But if anybody else knows, or you are indeed a holistic dentist who would be there to treat Joe, then please let me know because I would very much appreciate it. And just to throw the cat amongst the pigeons, as we do on a regular basis, Mark Porritt wrote in, said, "Hi, Sonia. We need to start talking about Trump and the possibility of him becoming the disclosure president. He is that unpredictable, and I believe he may actually make an announcement sometime later this year." And what Mark is talking about is these Mark sent me a link to a new platform, a new website that's been set up, the Unhidden Foundation. It's a non-profit organization established to promote education, understanding, improved health, and research relating to unidentified anomalous phenomena. So they've changed. So it's now UAP, right? So Mark is actually saying that we need to prepare for the fact that Trump may be the disclosure president. And the reason I say it's like throwing the cat amongst the pigeons, because I don't trust Trump, frankly, to take a pee these days. But I do value the fact that we try to be as kind of well-rounded as possible, take on board as many views as possible. And I found what Mark had to say really interesting. He said, for example, so first of all, he said that if Trump is there, it could have catastrophic implications for society. For example, it could affect religious beliefs. It could cause global panic, global instability. It could cause ontological shock and a huge increase in mental distress. So many things could happen, and it is best we all prepare ourselves, educate ourselves as best we can, just in case Trump does cause a paradigm shift. So there you go, Mark. I thought, you know what? I'm going to read that out. And I will also put a link in the description to the Unhidden website. See what y'all have to think there, kids. And I have to refer to what Bijan Dinesh has said. Bijan wrote in saying that he'd watched the show. He's an Iranian. And I'm going to read you some excerpts from his email, really important stuff. This regime is a ruthless, merciless, and intolerant dictatorship. And he's obviously now talking about the one that's just been removed. They have executed tens of thousands of innocent people since they came to power. In fact, when they first came to power, they eliminated all of their opposition, claiming they were drug dealers or some sort of criminals. All lies, of course. And then he goes on to talk about his own father, how his after the revolution, they selected people who were liked by the locals to become governor generals of each state. And Bijan said, my dad was appointed as the governor general of Sistan. And at the time, he was the vice chancellor of the Sistan and Baluchistan University. His main profession was professor of mathematics. He was well known for his honesty and being fair. But after a few months, generals had to go through an ayatollah for anything they wanted done. And it turned out that Bijan's dad had to actually go through the former supreme leader, now assassinated, Ali Khamenei, was appointed to control his dad's actions. Said his dad didn't agree with him, kicked him out and sent him back to Tehran. That was the point when that could happen. And what happened as a consequence, he was so, the Ayatollah was, well, he wasn't, I don't think he was the Ayatollah then, but he was so furious. What he did was he started rumors about Bijan's dad, about him supplying arms to fight the regime. It was a lie. But he made it so difficult for my dad to do what he wanted to do. And eventually they went after my dad. Bijan's dad eventually managed to leave Iran. He was unable to return to his home for 10 years. And Bijan goes on to talk about the mass imprisoning of political opponents, about anyone who spoke against them were either executed or imprisoned. And visiting wives were often forced to have sex when they visited their husbands in the notorious Evin prison if they wanted to make sure their husbands weren't tortured. This is just demonic. Just demonic. And it's extensive email. Bijan went back to Iran in 2024. He said everyone he met was unhappy. Retired engineers were coming out of retirement and driving taxi cabs to pay the rent and buy food. The level of corruption is so high that everyone is struggling financially. And then he goes on to talk about the bribes and corruption that was running the country and how they tried to bribe his father, but his father, a principled man, refused to be bribed. And he said, just to put things in perspective, before the revolution of 1979, £1 equaled 7 Iranian tomans. Now £1 equals 150,000 tomans. Saving becomes worthless very quickly, so people have to spend it quickly. And he goes on to address the issue about women are free to show their hair and have been in Iran. And he said this was not possible at all until 2 years ago when we had the uprising, Women Life Freedom, where many people were killed and many were blinded. And he then goes on further to address the dancing in the streets after the Ayatollah was assassinated and saying, I'm not sure about that. Most of the media is biased in favor of Israel, but I don't understand why they would party. What about all the schoolgirls who have died and the others who were killed since January? And I just found it a really insightful understanding from somebody who's not only Iranian, but also has such close experience with his father to the Ayatollah. And he said the Iranians in Iran want freedom. And the Shah's son is promising this. He has made deals with USA and Israel. I can only say, God help the Iranian people. We have a lot of work to do. Yes, indeed, we do. And thank you for that, Bijan. I very much appreciate that. And also to say thank you for showing out for Debbie, who worked for Jacobs for 45 years and was given crackers as a leave-in present. I put the video up and absolutely was appalled and astonished in equal measure to read some of your comments about how you and your loved ones have been treated by underappreciated employers. Shame on them all, frankly. And I will put a link in the description to Debbie's video if you haven't yet seen it. And thank you as ever to my wonderful donators, to Linda Isaacs, to Jade Torsig, to Catherine Montgomery, to Margaret Ruffley, to Noradine Sidham. Thank you all, you wonderful, amazing people. Alan Adams, Eleanor James, John Goldsmith, and on. I'm so grateful to you. Thank you today for the live chat as per. Thank you to Marilyn. There's a saying, they show us what they're going to do before they do it. A form of predictive programming. Read dentists. Have they changed the shots? Oh, that's an interesting question, isn't it? And thank you for all the super chats this morning, you beautiful people. Right. I want to talk about letting off steam. And the reason I want to talk about letting off steam was I only went and bought one of those hand steamers, didn't I? Because I have spring fever. And I always do. I'm pretty sure that I don't even need to look at a clock. It happens quite naturally around this time every year. I want to start getting rid of all the stuff that I've hoarded. I want to thoroughly deep clean. Anyway, I bought a hand steam cleaner and it's brilliant. I used it like on the backsplash from my cooker, not realizing how grubby it got there, and it all suddenly went all white again, and it was all beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And it really made me think when I was using it, right, about the whole idea of kind of letting off steam and what it sort of represents when you steam these things and you're sort of clearing up, mucky history in many respects. And I then started to think more about how letting off steam is kind of like a means to release any strong pent-up emotions that you may be experiencing related to stress or energy, because everything is energy, obviously. And, kind of relating back to what John is saying, that sometimes we're able to let off steam and release this pent-up energy through physical activity, through noisy behavior, through punching a cushion, whatever it takes. And running, lifting weights, sports, all those things are really, really good common ways to let off steam. But it just kept me thinking more and more about the releasing of the old, because the thing about obviously when you're steam cleaning is you are literally letting go of a history to a certain degree, because that mucky mess was accumulated through some kind of history, some kind of experience that you'd had, in my case, cooking. And I hadn't even realized, and I clean that backsplash every time I cook, but I hadn't realized what a hand steam cleaner would do. And no, I'm not being sponsored by hand steam cleaners. I just really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed using it, and I can't wait to use it again today. And I'm going to start on the bathroom today. Anyway, but the thing is, there's the whole idea of releasing the old is a very, very good thing, and none more so than now, because pretty sure that Shin will tell you in the comments that she, being an Aries, she knows as well as I do, as indeed do many people, that we have yet really to truly experience the start of our new year. But it is approaching us, folks, which is spring. I believe that is the start of the new year, not in January, when we're all in the middle of winter and all of that madness. So if you are in the mood to start releasing the old, that simple, easy, practical ways to do it, right? And that is identify what you need to release. Reflect on the habits that brought you to that point. Think about the thought patterns that you may or may not be caught up in. And also think about relationships that may be stagnating you. And people use an assortment of things to let go. Some people use steam cleaners. Some people do journaling. Some people use practical methods like as I say, writing it all down. Some people like to burn what they've written down because they feel that there's a release that takes place there as well. And some people even do things like, moonlight rituals or anything like that, really. Anything at all that will enable you to release the past, because we are forever moving forward, aren't we, as people, and so we have to find a way to do it, one way or another. And oftentimes these are mental shifts that we need to take. And you can do a lot of stuff, even if you are struggling to move. And I do know that there are some people in our comments who are struggling to move, and I get that. But you can do things like use deep breathing and meditation to calm the mind. Because one of the most important things, in order to be able to gain clarity, you need to be able to calm the mind. And good deep breathing, in and out, it can change things. But also, that those old things, those oldies but goodies, and that is the sort of acceptance of who we are, why we're here, why we're at this point in our life. Even if we don't like where we are, the best thing that anyone can do is be honest about where they are. Did you play a role in where you are? And if necessary, release and forgive if you need to. And I've talked about this before. I no longer feel the need to have closure in the kind of traditional sense of the word, because sometimes you can't get closure. Sometimes people do horrible, heinous things to other people. And I think it's kind of like an old-fashioned idea that, to forgive them because otherwise they're living rent-free in your brain. Well, somehow there are ways to stop people taking over what, you're thinking of them, without necessarily gaining that traditional closure that some people need. And some of those things can be found through journaling. Journaling is an amazing thing. If you just start and just kind of write automatically, it's amazing what will come up. But also set a good intent. And that is, if you're getting rid of old stuff, right, create a space for the new. Really important. Declutter as much of your physical surroundings as you can, but that will also lead to a decluttering of your mind, which I think is also important stuff. How are you, people? Good show, but she could have got angrier. Said, I'm not, do you know what? I'm feeling really like upbeat, and I'm feeling, I love that action that's taking place in Amsterdam. I love what's happening with Maggie Oliver. A lot of good stuff seems to be moving. And I'm really thrilled about that. The past is gone, the present is here, and the future is yet to be decided, said Kath. Indeed, be happy. And of course, I have a quote, because I always do, don't I? And but first of all, these are our credits. Thank you to everybody who contributes to Wake Up, however you contribute to Wake Up. And my quote today is, let go of the past, but keep the lessons it taught you, because where would we be without those wonderful lessons? And Howling Woodsman, is it your birthday? Happy birthday. We got a few Pisces round here, haven't we? Wonderful. Ooh, cleaning the bathroom, Rachel. Roll on spring and the new year. Wonderful. Lots of love to you. I love you too, Humphrey. Lots of love to you all. Beautiful people. Shin says we need a Simon Says at the end of the show. What a great idea. Thank you, Nikki. I will see you on Friday. Happy birthday, or London lady. I saw you'd had a little bit of a job issue, but knowing you, you will bounce back and some. Thank you, Fun Times Forever. Thank you all. Happy birthday to anybody that I may have missed today. Lots of love to you all. And I will see you on Friday, Merv. God bless you all. You beautiful, beautiful people. See you Friday.